and welcome to the Digital Signage Today podcast. I'm Judy Model, editor of Digital Signage Today. Very excited about our guest, Calvin Ward. He's a senior support engineer at Provisio. So Provisio has customers worldwide in 80 plus countries, serves over 10,000 international customers, and was founded in 1996. It's a software company specializing in secure kiosk application and digital signage. It's the developer of a turnkey solution called SiteKiosk Online, which is a universal software solution for enterprise applications. It ensures fail-safe and tamper-proof operations of kiosk systems across a wide range of industries. So SiteKiosk Online provides protection for publicly operated self-service terminals and tablets, and it has features for remote management and device monitoring. The system supports the creation and automatic distribution of digital signage and interactive applications. So Calvin's been with the company for over a decade, has experience in system support, software development, and technical sales. He specializes in Windows, SQL Server, and Android environments. So the reason we invited Calvin on is that we're talking security, which is a critical element when it comes to deploying digital signage. And that's because the security issues can run the gamut. We're talking cyberattacks, unsecured Wi-Fi, weak access control, and of course, physical tampering. And any kind of security incident can lead to financial loss, data breaches, reputational damage, and even public safety issues. Say you're in that airport, you see all the digital signage working, all of a sudden some misinformation comes across those screens. So when it comes to security, SiteKiosk focuses on device tampering security and interactive device security. So thanks for being here, Calvin.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So we're going to kick it off and talk about how critical security is when it comes to digital signage deployment. And does the typical enterprise understand why it's so critical?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so security really is a major piece of the puzzle, like a foundational piece of the puzzle when it comes to digital signage and interactive digital signage. Why does that matter? These are public, they're unattended, they're always connected, so they're vulnerable to tampering, depending on the location, more or less. But they're also touching kind of critical systems as well. So, when it comes to enterprises and awareness, there is an evolving awareness around security. Definitely, it's become a lot more focused in recent years. So companies are more aware today than they used to be with these security concerns. But there's always a little bit of complacency there as well. So, you could say that it's just content, or maybe it's just TV on the wall or something like that. But, you really need to look at these as access points toward your data and your information and your public image, like you said. So security always has to be proactive and not reactive in that regard. And there's always room for improvement. So, you can take care of complacency by being proactive and doing consistent security reviews and things like that.
So can you talk a little bit about how SiteKiosk itself, as a solution, approaches security? Because you guys do have a security aspect where, you're focused on making sure there's no user tampering, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how does that all work?
Yeah, great question. So through the SiteKiosk lens of things, when we're looking at it from the SiteKiosk software, SiteKiosk really takes a defense in depth style approach. So, think of it like an onion skin model where you start out with a locked down user profile. So this user already really has kind of zero trust permissions just at a Windows level. When I say user profile, I'm talking about Windows devices. So, very, very little access right from the start. And then the next layer on top of that would be maybe the GUI of the SiteKiosk software. So SiteKiosk replaces the Windows shell entirely, so they're not interacting with the actual Windows shell. It can look as much or as little like Windows as you like to give users that kind of familiarity. However, it replaces that Windows shell and locks it down in that regard. So that prevents users accessing the system from like critical windows and dialog boxes and PowerShell windows, things like that. So users can only interact with approved applications. They can only go to approved websites, and their SiteKiosk is going to listen for things like trying to run executables or batch files or whatever it might be, if maybe a port were left open or something like that.
Right.
So with the software lockdown, you don't want users to access that, anything pertaining to Windows, like even some accessibility features of Windows can provide attack vectors in some cases. So SiteKiosk replaces the Windows shell, prevents those windows and dialog boxes that might provide a pivot point into the system, and kind of later pivot onto the network. So that's the approach that kind of SiteKiosk would take in that regard. But most importantly, really, that last kind of layer is you need to look at the system as a whole. So, with the turnkey deployment, you can have a secure software, but you also have to take the hardware into account. You have to take the location into account. The physical security of the device, is something that you can't neglect either, because that's, going to be really paramount as to what the user can access on it. So, if you're not disabling power buttons and ports, at least have them in a locked enclosure, kind of things like that. So, it's SiteKiosk takes the approach that, really kind of a zero trust approach. So, why do you want to lock these down? Because they're, touching so many critical systems, really. So,
right. So, to me, Provisio has done a lot of work on that front in terms of security, but where does like the responsibility fall eventually? Because I'm an enterprise. I connect with a digital signage provider, not you guys, but am I the one who should be initiating that conversation, or should it be coming from them as they're trying to sell me, whatever solution they have? I was just curious about where the responsibility falls.
So, it's definitely not solely on the provider. I would say it's more of a collaborative effort. It really has to be a collaborative effort for everything to work. With that, both sides have to really kind of do their part. So on the provider's side, you have the secure software. So the provider is going to provide, a secure software with, regular updates that's, regularly reviewed for security, and encryption between the devices and the endpoints and the server. There's going to be sensible defaults. So, by default, SiteKiosk is very locked down to start with, in a way that works for most users. So at that point, you can take the SiteKiosk software and put it on a device and know that you have that software portion and OS portion of the device very locked down. And so that can really kind of springboard you to kind of looking at the device as a whole for any kind of vulnerabilities that might exist. So, those strong defaults can save you a lot of time. So you don't need to go through all those configuration steps if you start out with a strong software that's going to harden your device.
Right.
Now, at the enterprise level, and for the enterprise, in relation to that partnership, you have like network segmentation, maybe putting your kiosk devices on their own network segment so that they're kind of isolated from other systems that they don't need access to. Physical security at the deployment sites, regular patching and monitoring, and kind of continuous security reviews. So, the short answer is it's really teamwork, and
Right.
It's a collaborative effort. So everyone's got to stay vigilant on both sides of that kind of that puzzle there.
And it's teamwork even within the enterprise, because like you said, there's network, there's operations, there are so many people involved in securing everything, right? So I would hope that the strategy kind of touches on everybody in terms of what can we all do, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And that's really important as well. Like, that's a great thing to mention. There are usually a lot of moving pieces in large organizations, and digital signage is easy to kind of fall into the background, and no one, it's easy for that to kind of go without ownership, you say. So like no one's really kind of taking ownership of those signs because they're just sitting there and maybe displaying content, getting updated every once in a while. But you really have to have that ownership for, so that you can take accountability for those devices and the security reviews, and they don't get neglected in that regard.
Right. So, do you guys have any tips or kind of advice for, maybe the first timer enterprise, and kind of like, maybe make a check, are there checklist items like, if a solution provider doesn't bring up security in that couple initial conversations, is that like a red flag?
I think, if they're coming to SiteKiosk, they are kind of looking, for some way to lock that down. So I believe, by the time that, I might talk to a customer, they've kind of thought about security and might have it. Maybe it might be an afterthought or it might be forefront, but they're kind of looking for a secure solution at that point. So they're definitely on the right path when they're kind of looking at, talking to secure software vendors that could provide kiosk and digital signage solutions. So, but as far as like tips for the signs go, I mean, you really need to treat every device as like a potential access point or pivot point onto the network. So, treat it, not just like a screen on the wall, but like another endpoint. So you wouldn't put like an unprotected computer in the
Right.
lobby, and so you don't want people to access that and do what they will with it when it's unattended. So you need to treat these type of screens in that same regard, because like we were talking about earlier, they're so connected and they're touching on so many critical systems like payment systems, authorization systems, BI dashboards, loyalty rewards points, things like that. They're kind of touching on a lot of systems. So they definitely need to, stay vigilant and treat them just like any kind of endpoint or server and lock them down in that regard. So tips though, you definitely have to secure the software. So you can do a lot with the software to lock down the OS itself, but like disabling ports, maybe disabling power buttons or putting them in locked enclosures. So making sure you don't have a USB as a boot device. You don't want them to like boot from USB and reinstall Windows or something like that. So definitely got to keep things locked down on that hardware side of things. And the network, like we talked about earlier, network segmentation, keeping them, isolated from other devices, just kind of in a zero trust kind of way, where they only have access to what they need in that regard. So,
So, given that, hackers and everybody else get as innovative as solution providers in terms of getting better at what they do, what's your view? I mean, is security within the digital signage environment not get worse, but get more critical, like, rise to a higher level in the future, or do you, or on the systems right now, pretty much where they're going to be in terms of security, you know, um, access, and I just wanted to see if you kind of have a magic ball and you're looking into the future, what you think may happen.
yeah, well, I wish I had that magic ball, and that would definitely be helpful for me here. But, I think that we can make some kind of predictions based on kind of what's going on in the last couple of years. I mean, if you'd asked me this question 2 or 3 years ago, it probably would have a very different answer. So I think, today, there's a lot more going on with, quantum encryption and AI and all of this stuff. But so I guess in one way it's kind of it's become more critical because like we talked about, it's touching so many more systems. Like, if it's interactive signage, they might be touching a lot more personal information, health data. A lot on some of these kiosks are touching health data, education data, and that all exposes risk because there's mandates and for data privacy and things like that, and there are kind of not only financial fines involved with that, but reputational repercussions and things like that as well. So the risk exposure is definitely increases anytime regulation is introduced. Not just not just from the reputational side, but financial as well. So I guess the current focus, it's kind of really, even with a lot of the changes that have occurred in the last couple of years, it's really aligning your security goals with the business goals, getting everybody on the same page, and kind of figuring out, drilling down what do we need access to and only giving it that access. So zero trust, has kind of been a foundational type of security type of guideline when you're talking about, digital signage and kiosk type environments. So continuous monitoring also, it seems. As far as the future, though, I mean, AI has introduced a lot of interesting ways for hackers to become, not only quicker, but more advanced, but the seams are also introducing kind of AI intrusion detection and anomalous, behavior detection and things like that. So it's kind of a fulcrum where it's sort of balancing out between, so I'm not, AI will definitely have an effect, but I don't think it's not going to kind of break down things, in my opinion, in that regard, because you can kind of balance that out between the two. So, both sides have AI at their disposal when it comes to defenders and attackers. So, but yeah, that's we'll see. As more and more high-profile data breaches come out, we'll see what kind of regulation also is associated with that as well. So, like we talked about earlier, that has a lot to do with your risk exposure. So
exactly. So and we didn't, when we chatted before the call, I wanted to ask you, and I don't want you to name names, obviously, but can you kind of touch on some security incidents that have happened that you've read about or heard about because you're in the industry and you're got your eyes on everything, to give an example or two that maybe our readers aren't aware is actually a hot security aspect?
Mm-hmm. So one recently with digital signage, I know it was a larger organization, and in this case, it was hackers that were able to control the system, but it was kind of more of a hacktivist kind of standpoint. So they wanted to use the high visibility nature of the digital signs in order to get their message across. So they were able to kind of post on, all throughout this, organization with a lot of high profile digital signage, their message, and get that across. And so, that is really, that's kind of one that comes to mind. And that's the kind of thing that you need to watch out for. Other ones are like ransomware is also hacktivists.
Right.
Obviously that can affect your brand message, but hackers who are maybe running ransomware on devices, they're doing it for financial motives rather than kind of like ideological motives. But it's kind of the same result that they give you in the end there. So they're going to get, curious minds will kind of tend to, who are also technically adept will kind of find ways in there. So that's why it's always important to stay vigilant. And a lot of these attacks happen on the people side of things. So, maybe with like phishing and things like that, where they're gaining access to the system. That's why it's also so important to, once you start up, like, for example, in the management portal of SiteKiosk Online, you can activate two-factor authentication. And that's an easy way to kind of, add a nice layer of security to your account and kind of prevent those kind of intrusions as well. So, not all hacking, happens on the technical side. A lot of it is kind of on the personal side where you might gain access by convincing someone. So that's definitely important training and, two-factor authentication, securing things as much as possible. And fine-grained user permissions are also important. So, not only activating 2FA, but also only letting users edit or publish or whatever to the devices and elements that they're supposed to edit. So
Right.
SiteKiosk kind of gives you those options. So
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the two authentication aspect. Lately, everything I try and do, they got to send me a password on my phone, which a year or two ago was not happening. And these are sites I go to on a daily, weekly basis. Sometimes it's almost like they're not trusting the IP address anymore, or I haven't been there in 3 days, so are you? So and it's annoying, but I also feel like, okay, good. I don't want any one of my bank accounts, right? So that's the same to me as a digital signage message. I don't want my message getting corrupted, because all it takes is one episode, right? And all it takes is to have something go wrong, send out the wrong message, cause an issue, you know. So security's got to be number one.
yeah, it really is foundational. It's got to be a part of the plan right from the start, for sure. Definitely.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Calvin.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great talking to you.
It's time to wrap up. To our listeners, please subscribe to the Networld Media Group YouTube channel. You'll find all our past podcasts. If you go to digitalsignagetoday.com, you can sign up for our weekly newsletters, and you'll never miss a future podcast.